Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Austin, and I would like to say thank you for joining me in my slides about the old starter consoles. Let's get started. My research statement is simple. In this industry, I'm looking towards gaming. My research topic was originally meant to be a survey amongst my friends and family about what their first home console experience was like and what it included. For me personally, it was the original classic Xbox. Here on this slide, you can see all the data I've collected in my research. You have the starter consoles, the year, the company, the amount sold, or my bad, not the amount sold, the amount made. I have to fix that. And the surveyors. In this chart here, you can see that it is the starter console, first consoles played by the surveyees, or the people that took the surveys, basically. So what this chart indicates is the amount of my surveyors that started their gaming experience on the different consoles that I have documented. You have the Atari, 26,000, my bad, 2,600, can't read, Dreamcast, NES, Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, the Wii, and the Xbox. 5 of my surveyors started with the Atari. One of them only started with the Dreamcast, while 5 also started with the NES, or Nintendo Entertainment System. One started with the Nintendo 64, another one started with the PlayStation 1, 2 started with the PlayStation 2, 1 started with the PlayStation Portable, 3 started with the Sega Genesis, another 3 started with the Super Nintendo, 4 started with the Wii, and 6 started with the classic Xbox. Let's continue. On this chart, I have documented the companies with the most starter consoles surveyed. On the left, you will see the game company, and on the right, you will see the number of starter consoles. So, the companies goes as follows: Atari Inc., Microsoft, Nintendo, Sega, and Sony. Atari had 1 documented, Microsoft had 1, Nintendo had 4, Sega had 2, and Sony had 3. As you already know, this chart indicates how many they had. We can see here that Nintendo had the most, with Sony being in close second. The starter console release year. On the left, you have the year the console was released. In the middle, you have the month it was released. And on the right, you have which console it was. So in the year 1977, month November, the Atari 2600 was released. And so forth and so down. It goes to NES, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, Xbox, PlayStation Portable, and the Wii. I chose to use a scatter plot instead of a column chart here because I figured it'd be easier to document. It was interesting for me to see that November seems to be the majority of the years when a new console is released. I would have personally thought it would have been released in December during times of Christmas, but that seemed to have only happened once in this data. Then again, I suppose I also thought it could have happened maybe June, since that's midway through the year. Let's continue. The final chart. Money made from starter consoles sold. Let's get into it. So on your left, you have the starter consoles, and on the right, you have the money sold. Not money sold, amount made. Sorry, folks. Anyways, so on the bottom, you have the chart, and we can see that the Atari actually made more than the Dreamcast. Honestly, I was a little surprised by this, considering when the Dreamcast was released. Now, you also have another part here which surprises me, with the Xbox being such a low rating. But then again, it was a brand new model of its series, and you see that the PlayStation 2 actually had the most profits made. I would have thought personally that it would have been a Nintendo system, seeing as how many they had out already. Then again, the Wii did make some nice profits. Anyways, let's move on. Here are the end results. In my research, I have found that the Xbox was the most common system used amongst my surveyors, despite it having one of the lowest rankings in the sales. I also found that the PlayStation 2 made a better profit in sales rather than a console made by Nintendo. And finally, I discovered that Nintendo had the most consoles listed for the starter consoles, and I honestly thought amongst my surveyors that it would have been maybe an Atari or a Sega. But then again, I'm not too surprised, since the other majority of my surveyors were some a little older than me, but not as old as my parents and uncles. That's it for my end results. Time to move on to my conclusion. Here's my conclusion. In conclusion, I found that the Xbox Classic, like previously stated, was the most popular amongst my surveys, despite the PlayStation 2 having one of the best profitable sales. No, the most profitable sales. I've also discovered that Nintendo had the most consoles made, which wasn't super surprising based on, well, what happened with Atari. That E.T. game was not pretty. None of the consoles really shared a release year, which I originally thought would happen, specifically with the PlayStation 2 and the classic Xbox. But that's just something interesting, I guess. I've also discovered that the majority month of a new console is November, and as I previously stated, I would have thought that would have been June or December. So that was another interesting thing I've learned. I think that this data will help me in my industry to understand the companies and which ones make the most profit and which companies to use to target new gamers. This has been my presentation. Thank you for going through me through the whole video. I know I stutter a lot, so it's just something I'm trying to work on. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day or evening.